Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me for a special episode of Life in Surround. Today, it is my honor to chat a bit with Bruce Soord. For many of you, he may need no introduction, but he is a recording artist with a solo career and with The Pineapple Thief and some collaborative projects, and is also a mixing engineer and producer. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'd sort of mix and produce other bands. Usually that's all done remotely, as it is nowadays, because like bands from all over the world, so they just send me their stuff.
So, being life and surround, more or less obsessed with surround music, all the way from classic quads from the 70s to Atmos and RO3D and all the whiz bang technology that's emerging these days. And for me, you came on my radar probably when you dropped your first solo record
Mm,
and saw some information about it over on Quadraphonic Quad and where if you bought the CD, you could get the FLAC download.
that's right.
So I'm always game for that kind of thing, and really enjoyed it. I think it is a great record, and the mix doesn't disappoint. I think it suits the music and does some pretty, I don't know, daring things like vocals starting in the front and then emanating their effects to the rears and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then you've also released some Pineapple Thief surround material and have also done some remixes for other groups. So we'll get to all that. But I guess where I'd like to begin is just to ask you what got you into surround music, both in terms of being willing to put it out for your own material and then to also become a surround mixing engineer.
Well, I knew you knew about the surround world. I think mainly from in the progressive rock community. It's really down to Stephen Wilson when he sort of pioneered the release of surround mixes with Porcupine Tree. So we knew I knew that the world existed, but it seemed to someone on the outside of the bubble, it's quite an impenetrable world. When you look at it, you say to an average guy in the street, do you listen to high res surround audio? You know, it's quite a niche market.
Right.
But when you look into when you get inside the bubble, you realize how vibrant it is and how, you know, the people that, when you're inside that world, how, what a great place it is. And so I knew about it, but it was when I was asked to mix a Catatonia record. It was I was touring. I was asked to tour with Catatonia. It was
Was it the Fall of Hearts?
no, it was before that. It was the tour they did of Dethroned and Uncrowned, which is an acoustic release
Yeah, I've got that.
they made, and they did. So we toured and we recorded a show that we did in the Union Chapel, a venue in London, and it was released as an album called Sanctitude. And they,
Right.
Kscope, the label, or Peaceville, the sister label, asked me to. Kscope, Catatonia asked me to mix a stereo. And then the label said, "Can you do a 5.1?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do a 5.1." But I wasn't set up to do 5.1. So I, as you know, what you've got to then replicate. You've got to get your full range rear speakers. You've got to calibrate everything and do a lot of research into what people want. And well, we'll get onto that later. Like what do people want in the surround mix is an interesting one. So that's what got me into it. It was I just thought, what the hell? Let's just do it, you know. And got a lot of good advice from other artists who were already doing surround and put that one out. And I guess that mix was probably less discreet, more of a natural mix. I mean, it still had things going on in the rear field, but it was more of a, because it was a visual. I mean, we'll get onto this later in that you can't please everyone all the time, and you know, I did a very discreet mix for a live show with the visuals, and one guy contacted me and says, "What were you doing? You know, there's voices in the back of coming behind. It's like, oh, it's like." And then, of course, if you do the opposite and just try and make it natural, so all you've got is the ambience, and people will go, you know, equally mad at you and say, "Well, what are you doing? You know, I wanted a discrete mix. You know, this is." So yeah, it was a baptism of fire. But that's how I got into the surround.
And then, so jumping forward to where we stood, you did both types of mix.
That's true, yeah. And I remember talking. So we were lucky with where we stood in that we were able to put that out on Blu-ray, and so I was talking to the. Of course, when you get onto Blu-ray, there's only a couple of people that can author onto Blu-ray because it's so expensive and software.
That was Neil Wilkes for that
Neil
one, right?
Wilkes, yeah, and so yeah, really nice guys, incredibly helpful. I know that he's well known on the forums, and so we were talking about it, and I said, "How we've got like 25 gigs to play with on this disc. Let's do it. Let's please let's I'll do a natural mix, and then I can just have fun and do a discrete mix, and we can have all the options because there's the beauty of mixing the stereo." And I go on to this when we talk about the other mixes that I do. The beauty of mixing stereo is that it's quite quick to then just take that mix and put it in the surround, because one, I've already got it there because I use Cubase, which is really good for surround, and you know the mix inside out, and you've got it. It's already there mixed. I mean, when you separate it into the surround, there's a lot more work to do,
Sure.
but it's nowhere near as hard as when you're just given a Pro Tools session and say, "Bruce, we need a surround mix of this," which involves a ground up remix. So yeah, where we stood, I was pleased to see, because it's just been re-released by Kscope, and I was pleased to see the nice comments that are going on about it. But not least because there's a hell of a lot of stuff on it.
Well, that's excellent to know that it's been re-released, because that means it did well with its initial run.
It did very well, yeah.
And also one major pain point for us surround lovers is these classic titles that have gone out of print, like Toto 4. And in order to get a copy, it costs you over $100. And,
Yeah.
you know, if they would just reprint the thing, you know, the
Yeah.
label and the artist would be making some money, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
but they could
Yeah.
be running some sort of a risk to benefit, you know, analysis. And I guess it costs a lot of money for a major label to do anything.
Yeah, it does to manufacture, and Blu-ray's especially expensive. But even vinyl and CD. But yeah, you'd think if things are changing hands for hundreds of dollars, that's probably there's a demand enough.
Right.
To print.
Right, go for it. Try one.
Yeah.
And so there are some labels that have gone ahead and done a reprint of a super popular title, like recently Dutton Vocalion reran an Art Garfunkel album, like an old quad that they reissued. So
Right.
it does happen, and I just hope to see it, become more of a trend.
Yeah.
So congratulations on where we stood. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
really love that disc. And as I said in a previous video of mine, it's probably like the greatest surround value that's ever been put out.
Yeah, we did put everything but the kitchen sink into that disc.
Well,
yeah,
not only is there an interview, and I love that you, the band members take some pot shots at you.
Yes.
And you left those in, and I really respect that. I think it says a lot about you.
It's a good relationship that we've got. I mean, we've known each other, especially the bass player and the keyboard player. We've known each other for 25 years. So
and Steve does your mastering, right?
He does. Yeah.
So, and then also, not only did you do 2 mixes of the concert, but you put an album on there and an EP and an acoustic set.
Yeah.
Like, you really went for it. I bet Neil had his work to try to make that Blu-ray
did
work.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched upon how complicated it can get, putting these especially these discs out, because there's so many audio streams, and you've got to get the navigation exactly right on the authoring. So there's, like, as you know, mistakes do happen. But I think that the Where We Stood disc is, I haven't heard any complaints about that one.
So the Pineapple Thief surround albums, so far what I'm aware of is Dissolution.
Yeah.
Right? and Where We Stood
Yeah,
has Your Wilderness on it.
yeah.
And 8 years later, that's not technically an album.
No, so 8 years later was released as a bonus album when we with Your Wilderness. So Your Wilderness was when Gavin Harrison joined the Pineapple Thief,
Right.
and that's really when things started to, with Gavin's reach and as a drummer, he has a following, so people will see, oh, who's Gavin playing with? And all of a sudden, we had a lot of people going to check out the Pineapple Thief.
This is a good opportunity to just get that out of the way. I'm a Gavin fan,
Yeah,
and Cheating the Polygraph. I hope he
which he
puts
did a
out.
surround mix of.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I love big band, and
Yeah,
am not super familiar with a lot of Porcupine Tree, mostly just their later stuff because they put it out in surround.
yeah. And
So
he was
it's
telling me that he tracked all the instruments individually. So instead, rather than just getting a brass section in, he got people. So when you do a surround mix, that's
wow.
perfect. You can just put them in wherever you want.
Now I've noticed from some of the notes in Pineapple Thief albums that he does his drum mixes and supplies them for you.
That's it. So that's one of that is a slight hindrance for surround. So I think Your Wilderness had a surround mix as well. So ever
Sure
since
did.
Gavin joined,
Yep.
that's when the surround mixes started. But yes, so I just get a stereo stem of the drums, which I'm quite happy with because mixing drums is probably the hardest bit of doing a stereo mix. And Gavin,
But still, I noticed you found a way to get some cymbals into the surrounds and stuff.
there is a little bit, yeah. But I do really only have I generally bring the drums slightly back from the front,
Yeah.
and then feed some kick to the sub, and that's pretty much it. And we were saying about what people like and what people want from surround. I remember I did an Opeth, a Deliverance remix
Yes.
in stereo and 5.1, and the drummer has 4 toms, and he does loads of big,
Massive fills.
fills. So I thought,
Caveman.
yeah, let's put them in the surround, because I remember someone messaged me and says, yeah, put the toms in the surround. I says, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Yeah,
And then I
Stephen
got-
Wilson just did that on a Rush record, and it's just.
Oh, did he?
Oh.
Yeah. So I liked it, but then of course you're not going to please everyone, and someone says, "Bruce, why did you put this the split? Why did you not keep the drums as a set? An individual set?" And I go, and then you can't please everyone. That's one thing that I've learned. But
Sure enough.
but yeah, so so where was I going with that? It was just so with the Pineapple Thief surround mixes. Again, as I was saying, because I did the stereo mix, it was quite easy to get the surround working quite well because I knew where every single sound was, so I knew everything about the mix, so I could say, right, that's going in the back, that's going in the middle, that's going there, that's going to pan from there to there, and all that kind of thing. So that was easy to do.
All right, so then your solo surround album.
Yeah, so
Your
the
debut.
solo, the debut solo, again, because it was the first one, there wasn't so much of a budget for that, not even for a DVD. A DVD V. So
Right.
I wanted to do a surround just because I could, and so I said to the label, "Would you mind if I just let people know that there are FLACs out there, and all they got to do is, I trust people that is really contact me," and I gave them the link to download. So
Yeah, that was very cool of you because it started out as kind of a promotional thing, like if you pre-order, then you can get the link, and then I think maybe word of mouth didn't get around super well, and some people were just really chagrined, like they just wish they had more of an opportunity to get the FLACs, and so then you came on and let people know, hey, as long as you bought the CD, not a problem, I'll get you the link.
Yeah,
and that was very cool.
Yeah.
So I've got it on my trusty external drive.
Great.
Appreciate it very much. And then there is what I believe is your current record. All This Will Be Yours.
Yeah, so that was done. That was done recently, wasn't it? That came out in October last year.
Yep.
So yeah, there was a surround mix of that, but it was a DVD. So, well, we'll talk about formats, I guess, in a minute. But so I I authored the DVD, so I just so as people will know if they're into surround that only supports DTS.
Right.
So strictly speaking, a lossy format, but it's better than nothing.
It is 9624, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I think I think DTS 9624 sounds great. It's not, DTS HD is obviously technically better, but I don't think, when you've got a choice of, Bruce, we can do the DVD and you can get your surround out or not, then I take it. I take it. But yeah, so I figured out, that's another thing I did, is that I figured out how to do a DVD audio only release with the help of Neil Wilkes, thankfully, and got the software. And so now that's something that I do now for the label. Whenever they need a DVD, I'm able to do all the authoring. And if I'm mixing another band, I can say, look, do you want to get a surround mix out, because that will open you up to a whole new audience. Because
Yeah, it sure does. I mean,
yeah, there are people there are people who will just look out and what are the new surround releases. So
yeah,
it might
like
be
me.
someone really obscure, but they go, hey, check this band out.
Yeah, and I don't mean
it.
I don't mean it to sound insulting in the least, but there's so much music out there, and whether any particular artist ever crosses a consumer's path, is kind of this almost random type of thing, and I may not ever have known who you are if it weren't for surround releases.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
now I do, and I'm glad I do. I don't love everything that comes out in surround, but at least it is kind of a pathway to me checking it out, and I do happen to like your music, so
Right. Yeah, that's
it's
good.
it's a good fit. All right, so you also do remixes for other groups. Can you just give us like the highlights?
Most of that work comes from my label Kscope.
Kscope, yeah.
They will always want to do a special edition, and that usually comes with 5.1 mixes. Although recently I've seen that the new Catatonia album didn't have a 5.1, that didn't have a special. But I'm hoping that was just a one-off. But like the last couple of Anathema albums have all had 5.1 mixes, and
right.
But the thing about that is that you get, like with the Anathema record, the last Anathema album, which I did a 5.1 mix of, you get the Pro Tools session, and because normally most studios aren't set up to do 5.1 mix.
And that was the Optimist, right?
The Optimist, yeah. So the engineer, obviously they're all very busy, and they say, hey Bruce, yeah, I can send you the session, that's all I can do. So I got a Pro Tools session, and you don't get any of their outboard gear. You don't get, well, actually with them I was lucky because they printed some of the stuff which they had all the outboard gear used. But then you just have a Pro Tools session. You don't have any of the plugins. You can't get the session to. It sounds, all right, but you have to spend about 5 days getting a mix.
You have to replicate effects and stuff.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh. So it's quite.
That sounds like a bear.
It is a challenge, yes, and it's quite good fun. And then when you get there, it's lovely. And the Optimist was good because there was an awful lot of stuff that you could work with in surround. They had lots of especially what I quite enjoyed was they had lots of sound effects, people walking around, so you could play with that, making this guy walk up the beach and into a car, and then it all closed when he got into the car, it all closed down just to the center speaker, and then it came out and things like that. So that was quite good fun. And also the other good thing about doing surround mixes for other people is that the people in the bands, they're quite passionate about it. So Vincent Kavanagh, one of the brothers, he came down to my studio because he was so passionate. He was really excited about the idea of a surround mix.
So he was actually involved in.
Yeah, so I played him what I'd done, and he was like, "Yeah, really go for it." He was really keen to make it as edgy as possible in surround terms, and the same went for a Gong record that I did, the last but one Gong album. I did a surround mix.
Rejoice, I'm Dead, or I can't remember.
Yeah, Rejoice. Yeah,
Rejoice.
Yeah, and the bass player came down, and he was just and quite often it's their first taste of surround. So as soon as someone comes in my studio and I go, have a listen to this, and they're so used to the stereo mix, and then they hear it in surround, they're like, oh my.
Yeah, so I just talked with Mary Fall and her producer Mark Doyle, She just released her interpretation of Dark Side of the Moon on
Yeah,
Blu-ray,
yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
and it may have never even happened, except Mark found the 5.1 mix on a hard drive one day and phoned her up. Hey, do you have some time? And she came over, and he put it on for her,
Mm,
and she was just blown away.
mm.
And now considers it to be the definitive way to take in the album. It unlayers so many things and
It really
spins
does. Yeah, and it's
spins
quite
things around
funny.
the room in a playful way. And
Yeah, and you know what it's like when someone who's never heard surround the first time, it's quite funny to see the expression on their face. The first time you sit someone down and play them something in surround, they're like, "Whoa, what is this? Wow!" It's quite, that's the frustrating thing, isn't it? That that it could be such a bigger movement if more people knew about it.
so that brings to mind a question. That mix was done by Bob Clearmountain,
Right?
and he does a surround mix for basically every mix he does.
Okay.
And there is this huge body of surround mixes that he's done that have never been released.
Right.
If the artist or the label are only interested in the stereo format, then the surround mix just goes unused. Does that happen in your case, or
No, I think if it's going unused, then I do what I did with my solo record. I'll put the flax out there because
nice?
it seems like such a waste, to think that they're just piling up in somewhere. And so no, I think that yeah, and also that it's interesting to hear that Bob Clearmountain always does a 5.1, because if I'm doing any mixes, stereo mixes for bands, I always offer them 5.1. Usually not for any more, any
Well,
more
he
money.
has an analog console that allows him to do both in real time and just basically, I think, switch between the buses that he's monitoring.
Ah, right,
So it makes it pretty easy for him to do it.
right. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
All right, I want to sneak this one in just because we're sort of still talking about your remixes. Tim Bonus,
Oh
you
yes.
remember this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is he took the opportunity to go back and put out like the previous album along with the current one, right? So you get two
That's right.
surround albums.
Yes. So I did both those surround
Hmm.
mixes, and I authored that DVD.
Oh,
So
okay.
I said to Tim, let's, can you speak to Inside Out and see if they mind if we put both on there. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, I really dig those records too, and I think you did a great job.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hmm. So we had just begun to segue naturally into your surround mixing approach a few minutes ago when I derailed things. So could you just run us through like how you do what you do, maybe a day in the life of a surround mixer type of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny enough because I'm actually doing a surround mix right now with the new Pineapple Thief. So I'm right in. So it's quite fresh in my memory. So I think the first thing you do is obviously the boring bit, which is you take the stereo mix and then you have to just configure it so that it's going to your 5.1 buses. And so I've got quite a good workflow where I work with a lot in Cubase. You can work with groups. So generally speaking, when I switch from stereo to 5.1, it's quite quick to get everything then configured to go into your surround field, and then you can just play around, so I also, before I start, I configure all my effects. So I've got one thing I tend to do quite a lot. If I've got any delays on a vocal, I will let them wash over to the rears, and reverbs I let wash to the rears.
I've
No,
noticed.
Steinberg have got some surround reverbs which are nice, so I've got all those set up, and then I just also set up different reverbs that are set one to the front, and then you can configure a similar reverb, just change the parameters, put that to the rear, and then you get a similar kind of depth of field with that. And then it's just really having a lot of fun, just going, right, I've got all these backing vocals, they tend to go to the rears, but if you've got four, then you can bring them to the front.
Right.
I tend to put the lead vocal into the center speaker, but not solely in the center speaker. And then there is also the issue of the center speaker, where some artists get worried that people will go in and steal their vocal, especially if all you've got is vocal in the center, and then do remixes. So some artists have asked me to can you put other stuff in the center, which is a bit of a shame because it makes it less discreet, but
Sure.
it stops people worrying about things getting nicked.
That's understandable.
Yeah, and then you just keep going over and over until it feels like you've got a balanced, discrete mix with. Especially, I think the what working with the rears is something that I've just learned to get better at over time, and not to be afraid of them. The other, also, of course, the other key thing is what you do with the sub or the LFE channel, and I've tended to be. There's the interesting thing about the sub is that if you've got it's mixing for all people. So if you've got the high fidelity surround sound, the lovers will have full range systems with no bass management. So I could pump all what I want into the LFE and get a really exciting mix that will sound great for full range systems. But then as soon as you put it into a bass managed, small, entry level system, then it's feeding way too much to the sub. And I had an interesting chat with Simon Hayworth. He has a mastering house near here called Super Audio Mastering, and it's one of the few places that actually master for 5.1.
Yeah, I've seen his name on quite a few projects.
Yeah, I mean, especially he's mastered all the King Crimson stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like me, I've got a sort of a small prosumer unit down here that I test my 5.1, so I get it sounding great in my full range, and then I will always test it through a satellite speaker system. And when they master, always the LFE channel is hardly there at all. It's because that's the only way that you can make it good for all systems. But I've tended to put my LFE a lot higher. With the last solo album, I actually did 2 surround mixes, one with a higher LFE mix, so more sub for people with full range systems. And I said a little message on the DVD saying, well, if it's too bassy, then try this mix. So
Probably
it allowed me to have the best of both worlds. But yeah, that's it really. I think I don't think there's any particular secret to mixing in 5.1, and that's one of the things I think that if someone said, oh Bruce, how do I get into surround mixing, I've got a stereo set up, I want to, is that it's really not as difficult as it sounds. Yeah, you've got to get your full range rears, your full range center and the sub, but once you've got that and configured it and you've got a way of monitoring in that way, then it is just a case of mixing.
Yeah, I dabble with it myself. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You had just mentioned alternate mixes, and I know that you meant in terms of just how they sound, but on a lot of your releases, you actually like reinvent some of the songs, and then you get those as an alternate stream.
Yes, yeah, that's just something I've tended to do. So with the Bruce Soord, I did acoustic.
Right.
They're not just like, oh, let's mute the drums. They're like re-records.
Yeah.
Reinterpretations. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially for Dissolution, there are about a half dozen tracks that are just a totally different animal.
Completely, yeah. That
different
came
guitar
out really
player.
Well. Yeah. George played on that. Our live, George Maris, our live guitarist. So yeah, that came out really well.
All right. So, what, in your opinion, so far, is your best or favorite surround mix that you've done?
I think at the moment, probably my last solo album, because probably it's the freshest. And the good thing about the solo record is that because it was a lot of electronic beats, so there's a lot of nice things to send to the sub. Everything was split, so I was able to split the rhythmic elements all around.
Yeah, the percussion really is kind of bonkers in a good way. Yeah, in a very interesting way.
Yeah, thanks. And I think because it was my most recent mix, I guess you're always learning. You're always getting. And also the other thing I didn't touch upon when I was doing how you approach the surround mixes is it's quite. I rely on play testers. So when I've done a mix, I'll send it to a friend of mine who's got 2 really good systems, and he'll play it back and he'll like send me back what he thinks of it, because it's really interesting when you do surround to to be able to know what it sounds like to other people who are really into surround, because it is more challenging getting a surround mix to be universal to someone.
Yeah,
Stereo is a lot easier.
I have the occasional privilege to preview for various people, and it's
Oh well, I'll add you
very
to my list.
that was my passive aggressive way of
Yeah.
seeing if I could sneak that in there. Um, for newcomers to your work, like for instance, possibly seeing this video, where would you recommend they start with your work?
I guess Where We Stood is a good place to start, because that's even though it's a live record, it covers. It's almost like a greatest hits.
Yeah,
You've got the surround mixes in there. So yeah, I think that's the best place, and that gives you an insight into the last two Pineapple Thief studio albums with Gavin. That's
right.
really what that's when the Pineapple Thief really sort of went from here to here.
Yeah,
But also quite a few of the older songs in there as well. So yeah, that's a good place to
no
start.
argument from me. All right, so you had mentioned earlier the various formats of releases, and that's something that is sort of a hot topic among surround enthusiasts, because sometimes you get a Blu-ray packed to the gills. Sometimes you get a DVD video. DVD audio still exists, but it's pretty rare. A super audio CD. Um, there are still people releasing DVDs with Dolby Digital
Yeah, what AC3? Yeah.
on it, like yeah. So from your perspective, like how much control or input do you have into that? And can you just give us some insight? Because from our perspective, it's like we always want lossless,
Yeah.
discreet. And, I think it is interesting to me to try to put myself in your shoes. That,
It's
may
it's a
not be
good
an easy
question.
choice sometimes.
No, and also when you first get into surround, the formats is probably one of the things it takes the longest to get your head around. What the hell is all these formats? What's the difference between a DVD-V audio only, but it's a DVD-V, and of course you can also do a DVD-AV, which I think Neil Wilkes is one of the few people that has the skills to do that. But and I have done a few of those, but so you can get lossless surround, but you can also play it as but it will automatically switch to a DVD-V if the system can't access it. So that seemed like a really good solution, but it's just too different. It's really difficult to author.
Yeah, they're becoming very rare.
Yeah, very rare. And but it's really a challenge. I mean, it really went with me and my label Kscope. It really comes down to budgets. So that's why the first Bruce Soord album budget was low, so it was just a FLAC. And then if I can persuade them, I'll say, look, I can offer a DVD-V, and that's the next best thing, because that allows it to be physical, and like we say, it's lossy, but it's not bad, and I can author it, so it's not that expensive. Really, after that, and we touched on the AV thing, after that you've got to go to Blu-ray, and that is very expensive. It's just expensive because of the licensing that you got to pay to Sony, and the software that you need to author the Blu-ray is incredibly expensive. So there's only a few authoring houses that can do it. So that makes it quite prohibitive. But luckily, Pineapple Thief got to a level where we're selling enough units where they said, Bruce, yeah, we're doing a Blu-ray. So Blu-ray is obviously the best. But I kind of thinking that the future is probably in digital files. I think that FLAC is just FLAC is lossless. It's easy to distribute. Most people I know that are really hardcore surround, addicts have the ability to play FLACs. I haven't, so whenever I send a test mix out, I just send FLACs, and everyone's going, great, yeah. So the only thing of difference is that it's not so nice as having a physical thing that you can open and pull a Blu-ray out, put it in, have all the visuals, and of course it's not so good for live concerts where you've got video.
Well, and one thing that maybe is a viable choice, like we had already talked about your debut solo record. I have this to have and hold and also the flags. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe
it
just
does,
download codes. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
so that could be a possibility.
Yeah. I just think that if an artist is able to do a FLAC 5.1 mix, and all you got to do is just stick a download code in your release, then that makes it viable to almost anyone. You know, you just got to host the files, but that makes I'd imagine most record labels would say, well, no, well that means that we get into the surround market, so why not? Yeah.
So your current album, All This Will Be Yours, I find it very enjoyable.
Mm.
The one word that I would use to describe it if I had to give a one word review is foreboding.
Mm.
And from what I understand, it was inspired by the arrival of a new child.
It was, yeah, yeah. So I've got 13-year-old twin boys, and we and my wife fell pregnant. It wasn't planned, and but she was. We thought, great, let's do it. And we had just finished the Dissolution tour. We played a show at Shepherd's Bush Empire in London, and the next day my wife came to that show, and the next day we drove home that same night, and the next day she went into hospital and was induced and had the baby. So it was pretty full on. And the tour was over and we were back, and then after the sort of about the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks when they start sleeping through the night and things like that, I was back in my studio, and quite often I would have my baby daughter just down here sleeping, and I'd be working, and I'd be having my guitar, and I think, right. So I just couldn't help but get influenced by what was going on. I mean, obviously they're not just all songs about my daughter, but they're songs about the world, and my perspective of bringing my daughter into this world, and at the time it was, well, it still is. It's obviously very different now, but it was very polarized. Obviously it's very polarized in USA. It's also very polarized in United Kingdom. So it was I was quite concerned about the world that she was coming into. But
so I'm a fairly new daddy. I have a 3-year-old, and he came along after a very long struggle, about 15 years in the making.
Right.
So my wife and I are super grateful that he's here, and went through a bit of tragedy along the way. And so we're profoundly grateful that he's here. But yeah, I understand that concern over, what is this person inheriting? What have I brought them into?
Yeah.
And so that's what I meant by, I think, I get a sense of foreboding through these tracks. Like, hey, you know what? I've brought you into this world. I have all of these things to share with you and to show you. And someday I'm going to be gone, and all this will be yours.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yes, and you have to. Yeah, exactly that.
So, am I picking up on that correctly?
Exactly right. Yeah, but like when I was born in the 70s, and the world was just as scary back then. I think it's just scary in a different way, and so I was still
we get
very
so much
positive.
more information now.
Yeah, we do.
I think there was a lot that we were not aware of. I'm also a 70s kid. That we weren't aware of unless the newspaper printed it,
exactly.
You know what I mean? So, so that's your current solo record, and then Dissolution is still the latest, the Pineapple
It
Flake.
is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you guys also have a live CD out, Hold Our Fire.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So we released that was from the Dissolution tour, because there were no Dissolution tracks on Where We Stood. So we thought we had it, because we record a lot of the shows, so we were able to mix it, and it helped us make touring the North America, which we did last year, the end of last year, just in time actually, viable, because it's very expensive. Obviously,
no plan for surround on Hold Our Fire.
No, unfortunately, no, they didn't. But that's one of the mixes I never did do in surround, actually. So but no, that would be very easy to do. So yeah.
Is it a play on words at all from like Hold Your Fire?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Can you explain that for me?
I think Hold Our Fire is just really the audience. So, take our music, we're
Oh,
giving it to
nice.
you. Yeah.
I like it. Hold Your Fire is a favorite Rush record of mine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
wondered.
hold. Yeah, because I think Hold Your Fire was a lyric in one of our tracks.
Oh, cool.
But yes. So, but then I realised I can't call the track Hold Your Fire because obviously the Rush album.
All right. Well, I will go and check out Hold Our Fire, even though it's only in stereo.
Yeah. Sorry.
um, so, what are your future plans? And
Well,
you
like I said,
mentioned that you're working on something right now.
yeah. We finished the new Pineapple Thief. I think is it yesterday we had the stereo finished and mastered. But I started working on the 5.1 last week, so that's a lot of fun. So that's going to be coming out later this year. That will be a Blu-ray, so full res. So that'll get the full works. So from me, and that'll have all the bonus material, reworkings and acoustic reworkings, all that kind of stuff. So everything, all that in surround and
Well, you just made my day.
yeah, so that's the next thing. So yes, there will be another surround release coming. That's probably going to be late summer, September time maybe. We don't know yet exactly when it's coming out.
Something to
But
look forward to.
yes, yeah.
And any remix projects?
Do you know? No. I've just finished mixing a Mexican band called Alpha Lighting System. Very interesting. And I'm gonna speak to them, see if they want to do. I'm sure they will, but if they want to put their album out in 5.1. But I think since the Pineapple Thief has become a lot more successful, I'm spending a lot of time on the road. Although not now, obviously, with the global lockdown. But
Right.
so the Pineapple Thief became a full-time job. So the mixing work sort of became a sort of if I've got time, I'll do mixing work. But now, obviously, I've got time.
So, how is the lockdown affecting you?
It's not at the moment. It's not too bad because I'm lucky. My studio's in my home, so generally my day involves getting just it's in the roof of my house. I'm very lucky. It's a really nice space. But so I'm able to carry on working as normal, and we were always
you're able to write, record, mix.
Yeah, and we were always going to be working on the Pineapple Thief during that time anyway. So when things started to get locked down, that we were always going to be mixing. So
and the other guys can record in their spaces as well.
Yeah, we're lucky. So Steve's
Very
got.
cool.
I mean, obviously Steve Kitch has got world-class mastering equipment. He's always showing me his outboard gear and look at this new EQ I've got, and tells me how much it costs, and I'm like, my god, very nice. So he's got all the facilities. Gavin's got an amazing place. He's got a huge drum room. He's got his drum kit permanently set up with the best mics you could possibly ask for. So he doesn't need a studio, doesn't need a commercial studio. He's just got the best drum recording at home. So
if we could just convince him to give you the multi-track sometime.
Yeah, I know. I will. Next time I see him, I'll say, look, these surround people are saying, come on, Gavin, give us your bits.
Or at least for like an alternate, like a little teaser.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And John, who's the bass player. Now the bass is probably one of the easiest people to. We just invested in a really good preamp and a really good interface.
So you've known him basically forever, right?
Since I was 18, yeah, we met at university. Yeah, so it's been a good story for us because we're best mates. I was his best man. He was my best man at our weddings, and we started a band together at university. And so to think that we're doing it next, touring the world now is we always say to each other, this is great. It's quite nice to do it almost like the reverse way. The traditional way for bands to get successful was for them to, when they're like 18, get a massive record deal, get a huge record and never really follow it up and slowly make their way down. And we gone the opposite. We sort of started up there and have slowly made our way up. And so it's a good way to do it, I think.
So you mentioned your weddings and Mother's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our wives for a second. How long have you been married? It seems like a rather long time.
I met her in 1997. 96, 97. So she's lived it right from before we got a record deal, before I started the Pineapple Thief. So she's had to put up with me for a long
Oh,
time.
tell me about it. Yeah, I know that your father was in the military,
He was, yeah, in
and
the dreamy.
I am. I'm on reserve status at this point, but I still get
Right.
called away from home.
Yeah.
So I know how much my wife has had to deal with, not only with my eclectic, obsessive music stuff, but with military service and
Sort of
whatnot.
being
And
away. Yeah.
so I can, empathize
Mm.
about, she's had to deal with you being away from home. And
Yeah. Yeah, and it's especially tough when you're in a band and you're away and you're losing money. Then it becomes very difficult, and 'cause
oh, wow.
yeah. So recently, when the band became a lot more successful, it was easier then to justify traveling, because you're actually coming back with a little bit of money, which was definitely just in the nick of time.
So when do you anticipate being able to tour again? Are you going to come to San Francisco, most importantly?
Definitely, yes. We're definitely coming back to San Francisco. So we're looking at coming back to the USA in spring 21. So
Okay.
I'm hoping by then people will, even if, I hope that venues will be open and people will want to go back to them. That.
Yeah, we might all be in masks.
Yeah, exactly. So
That could be freaky.
Yeah, it will definitely look quite. It's going to be a lot of getting used to. Yeah. So we're definitely looking at coming back to North America. We've got a European tour booked for September, October, November, but we're just praying that things will change. But we're just looking at the situation unfold at the moment. But
any possibility of doing some sort of a lockdown live stream?
I think we're going to talk about that, yeah, because as I said, Gavin's got a big place, a very large live drum room that he uses for reverb that we rehearse there.
Okay.
Because we've got all the gear, we've got the mixer, and so it'd be quite easy to do that. So yeah, I think that's definitely on the cards. I did actually a little acoustic gig last week, which went really. I was really surprised how. I mixed it, a little bit, and I was surprised how well that went. There's a real market for it. There's people seem to want it. So I think we'll do it.
Did that go out? How did I miss that?
Yeah, it's on my Facebook page. So you don't have to be a Facebook, because everyone says Facebook. You don't have to have an account. You just go to the page and it's and you can watch it.
Oh, excellent. Okay. And is that available to replay?
It is.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll go check that out.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I have one last question, where you see the music business going, the future of surround music, but also just want to invite you to say anything that you would like to.
Yeah, I mean, the future, I think that now with the lockdown and bands losing their income, I mean, it's bad for bands, but it's much worse for people who work in the live industry, like the crews, sound engineers. Right. They've completely lost their livelihoods. At least we've got royalties, but it has exposed how unfair streaming is to artists. Something that I think this might force the issue. Everyone goes on about Spotify, but YouTube is probably the worst. That's where most kids get their music nowadays, and they pay less than Spotify. So I think that streaming's not going to go away. I don't know. Does anyone stream in 5.1? I know YouTube do the gamers.
They're beginning to roll that sort of thing out, like with Apple TV.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam even just released an album in Atmos, and they put it out. They put it out over Apple TV, but you have to have the right technology for it.
Yeah. So
and as big of an Atmos nut as I am, I wasn't poised to be able to do that. So there's a site called surroundmusic.one that you can stream some 5.1 to at least get they'll do 1 or 2 songs per album, and then you can download the rest.
Yeah. So I think
it's
for now,
possible. So it is possible.
It is possible, but I think, especially for the progressive rock community, physical formats are still selling, and people still want the physical product, which is good. Obviously, good for us. It's good and very good for our label. So I
Yep,
think for
I
now,
love shiny spinny discs.
yeah, exactly. And lots of people are buying vinyl, so as
Yep.
well. So I think physical product isn't going to go away as quickly as people maybe thought it would go away.
I hope never.
Yeah, it's certainly not. We'll always do physical. I mean,
Never
we're lucky. We're
completely,
still
right? I mean,
selling
you could
more.
always put out the vinyl and the CD, and then have a download of the high
Exactly.
res.
Yeah. I mean, we release on release day. It's on all the streaming platforms, but we still sell a lot of physical, and every album has gone up, even when the trend is down, except for vinyl, where the trend is up. So yeah, I don't think it's as doomy as a lot of people are saying, but I do think that something has to be done about the streaming model, because artists are just not getting anything, especially when underground artists who may get, I don't know, 50,000 streams of their new song, they're not going to get anything for that. Whereas if they released an album and and they sold, I don't know, 10,000 CDs, then they'd make a decent amount of money. So it's just it in fairly impacts on the smaller artist as well. So I don't know what the solution is, but apart from just paying more royalty fundamentally.
Sure. And surround music.
Well, I just, I think that's definitely not going to go away, because there's so many people like you who are just so passionate about it. And I think as long as there's people out there like me putting it out, and there are. So I'm certainly going to keep doing it.
Yeah, and a big trend that seems like it's trying to get going is Atmos.
Yeah.
They've claimed that they've mixed thousands of songs into Atmos, and I'm just waiting to see how they release them and what the format will be. Will it be all online or Blu-rays, or what will it be?
Yeah. Because that's one world that I haven't ventured into.
The new Steven Wilson record is going to have 5.1 and Atmos.
Oh, is it?
And the Beatles just did Abbey Road like that last year.
I might probably I might speak to some people then and see what the options are for the Pineapple Thief. Maybe now's the time.
Could be if it's feasible.
Yeah.
Well, final thoughts.
Well, like you say, the world is a very strange place at the moment. But for me, in my little bubble in my studio, it's business as normal. So I'm just looking forward to making more music and more surround music, and that's never going to go away, is it? People still, no matter what goes on out there, people are still going to want to listen to the music is probably more important than ever.
Right, in this time of lockdown, it's something that's keeping me from going completely off the deep end.
Yes, and it's it's something that's familiar, and as it was, it hasn't changed. No virus is going to change music.
Well, Bruce, I appreciate your work, your music, and the fact that you have embraced surround and have been quite prolific so far, and you're charging ahead. We're going to get some new The Pineapple Thief this year.
Yep.
That's excellent, and I have appreciated talking to you today.
Yeah, thanks. I've enjoyed it. Always good to talk about. Well, it's not often you get to talk about surround, so it's good fun.
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity, and anything that I can do to help, promote the health of surround music and the releases that you have coming up. I'll do everything I can, because you're just killing it, man.
Thanks very much.
All right, well, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Cheers.